All right, what is going around is the collection that we take up for Green Valley Bible Camp. And most congregations in this area support it, so Taryn can support it. He got that big money. He does real estate. He got big money. Taryn, I was rich until Friday. And when we woke up in our bank account, there was like 4 withdrawals for $1. And after whoever it was, the scoundrels who I will not forgive, I'll back over them 5 times accidentally. Then it went to 129, 129, 129. After that went through 259, 259, 259. So I don't have any money. So if you'd like to take up a collection for me, I think we lost about 50,000. I don't know that you don't do better to buy one of those preloaded so that if someone does get it like that, Donna knows who it was. So someone called Raine, R-A-N-E, Global. And she called them and said, someone is using your name and whatever to steal money. And I've had this happen several times. Once was when I first moved here in Santa Ana, California, the bank called me and they said, are you in Santa Ana? I said, no. I said, I'm here in Farmington. Well, there's someone in Santa Ana, and every 2 minutes they took $200 out of my account. Just something about me and money or bank account. All right, we do have situations that we need to stay on top of, and one of them is that we no longer have a church secretary. And so if you have anything you want in the bulletin, send it to the church email address no later than Tuesday. If it comes later than Tuesday, and Sarah's still going to be doing the bulletin. And so if it's any later than that, she can't get it in. So it's up to us. If you want something in the bulletin before Tuesday, send it to the church email. Another situation, Sister Louise Berger, I had promised her a bed. We took one of the beds and gave it away because we made an office out of that room, but we still had the guest bed, one that I hand carved. It was gorgeous, and I told Sister Berger she could borrow it for a while. She has company coming down, and my kids called and said, well, we were heading to Tellico Plains, which is northeast Tennessee, but we looked and it's raining, and it's going to be raining, so they just turned around, and last night they came to the house. So I kind of gently asked them, well, how long are you staying? I thought, well, they'd just be here for Labor Day. And she said, oh, we're off till a week. Oh, no. Go home. But anyway, so that situation changed. Sister Louise needs to borrow, if you have one, a twin bed. And like I said, it's just borrowing for a short period of time. But if you have a twin bed that I can come by and get this afternoon, so I can be a man of my word, I'd hate to go to hell over a bed. So help me out. If you have one that Sister Louise can borrow, I've got a trailer out here and I'll come get it. All right? No, it can be a full. I think a twin and a full, same thing. Ah. The full is the single. All right, I give up. I got an ear mattress, Louise. And Donna can sleep on that, and we'll lend you our bed. Do what? Yes, I would be in trouble. Mm-hmm. We'll take anything. We'll take a pillow. So if you can help me in that way, I sure would appreciate it. And I'll make that announcement with the congregation here in just a little bit. Good to have you. Turn over to the book of Exodus. And what we're dealing with is the 10 Commandments. We have looked at the Passover and how the Passover is the roots of the Lord's Supper. And when you go back and you understand the meaning of it and the tradition of it, and really how strict it was, what they had to do, otherwise God was not going to deliver them. And it starts with if. Notice, get in the habit of looking at the condition of God's promises. If you will do this, I will do that. Which means if we do not, society now has a terrible problem with turning the coin to see what's on the backside. Now, we have awesome prairie grove. But do not dare put anything negative on it. They only accept Andy Griffith good stuff. And I have wanted to say, a one-sided coin is worthless. And most of the people are not criticizing, they are simply making a suggestion. A lot of you now work in a work situation where you're called to a group meeting. We're going to discuss some things. But if you disagree with one of the people that's leading the team, you're not a team player. So Donna, many times in her work, she is so good that she can see if they say something like, we're going to do this, this, this. Donna can look down and she can say, but at stage 3, here's what's going to happen. Oh no, we've done all the research and everything on that. That's not going to happen. And so at stage 3, a couple of months down, and they have this problem, they'll say, isn't that what Donna said? I believe this in the church. I believe the more input that we have, the better decisions we can make. All right. Uh-huh. And some people have a good plan in front of them on paper, but they've never worked it. New Zealand does things a little bit different. You start as a bank teller and work your way up through the bank at the bank's expense to become a bank president. So when someone says to the president, we've got a problem down here, he says, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. John, how many engineers, designers of automobiles has worked on them?
From what I've seen, I've never met an engineer. From what I've seen by working on the stuff they design, none.
Would they be better designed if they came to John and said, John, give us your input?
I would hope so. Yeah, only if they listen.
Now the question, do they? No. They have a degree in designing a car how you can't work on. All right, let's go to the book of Exodus chapter 20. And in Exodus chapter 20, one of the things that we learn when God speaks to his people is that it is conditional. You have to flip the coin, and God does flip the coin. He said, it will be this way if you do this. But if you do not do it, it's going to be like this. When they demanded a king, and the Bible says that he gave them a king in his anger, and he took it away in his wrath. Israel said, we have no king, which meant we don't follow God, because God is king. He's always a king. And they looked around, Amos chapter 6 and verse 1, it says, woe unto them that are at ease in Zion and trust in the mountains of Samaria. They trusted the world around them rather than God. And God said, here is what the kings will do. And that's exactly what the kings did. And so in the Ten Commandments, you have the first premise that you have there is that God is a jealous God. That God will not allow a split allegiance. And if he doesn't have our primary allegiance, and we are not faithful to him first, he is not obligated. He is not obligated to keep his promises. He went before us, and I realized that he is God, but he gave the very best. It wasn't second best. And that's our example. It's not too well compared to so-and-so. That's not our standard. Our standard is the Lord. And so he starts and he gives these commandments. The Ten Commandments. We read them last week, and we'll not read them again, but I want you to go back and just look at them and see where God is and what God is doing with his people. He deals with verse 3. And he deals with there in verse 5, the reason that we should not have any images is because he is a jealous God, and the image that we would make would be what? Inferior. Go and look at nations. Look at Egypt. And look at the gods that they had. And the Ten Commandments, or the 10 plagues, is God going up against their gods, and they lost, and God won. Even to Pharaoh himself, who was an earthly god. And so he goes on there in verse 5, and he said, I am a jealous God. And he said, I will visit the iniquities of the fathers. When was the last funeral that we had here? Been a while, hasn't it? Listen carefully. You may be next. In heaven, someone's going to come up to you and they say, you may not know it, but I want to tell you the influence that you have been on me. You helped me get here. But there's also going to be some children. They're going to point their finger at their parents and say, if you had not lived the example that you lived before me, I would not be here. Tell me some things about death. After death, what? Do what? The judgment, Hebrews 9:27, it's appointed a man once to die. And after this, the judgment. The what? Your deeds are sealed. There will come, and judgment's not for you going to heaven or going to hell. It's why. You will know the minute you die where you're going. You don't have to wait for judgment. If you are in a hot place, you'll be in the wrong place. If you're in Abraham's bosom, you'll be in the right place. And so judgment's not there to decide where you're going. But we will know why. Revelation 14:13. Their deeds do follow them. All right, so after death, number one, you are conscious. We turn to Luke chapter 16, and we say, well, this is a parable. Let me inform you something. Luke 16 is not a parable. The parables that Jesus teach go like this. The kingdom of heaven is like. And God throws another story alongside so you can make the comparison. Luke 16, there was a certain man. That's not a parable. And he tells the story of his life here on earth. And there was another man. And what we have a tendency to do with parables is to say, well, they're just not as important as the real story. That's not the case. A parable is told to teach truth. It's not secondary to truth. Sometimes. You remember, they asked Jesus, are you telling these to conceal or are you telling them to reveal? And so we will be conscious. He realized that he had 5 brothers on the other side that he did not want to come to hell. He was conscious, and that he was able to call Lazarus by his name. Another thing is we will recognize one another after death. Don't ask me what sort of body. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, we do know that it will be immortal. You have the disciples on the Mount of Transfiguration, and Moses and Elijah showed up with the Lord. I don't know how they knew. I mean, one was the lawgiver, which is being surpassed by the Christ. The other was the prophet, and he had been surpassed by the Lord. But they recognized Moses and Elijah. And then there will be the idea that you will know what you have done. And by the way, when you die, you're not going to sleep. You will be conscious the minute that you die. All right, so Jesus said, there will be no allegiance except to me. I am a jealous God. And you're not to bow down before any other. And then we looked at the idea from 7 that you shall not take the name of the Lord in vain, and we discussed that somewhat. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Does any of this apply to our worship day? Do what? A principle. I remember in Tullahoma, Tennessee, I got out Sunday afternoon after worship, and I thought I was going to do Donna's uncle and his wife a favor, and I cranked the mower up, And they had a big yard, and I started mowing the yard. And she came out and she said, well, I appreciate it, but we don't mow the yard on Sunday. The principle. There ought to be time, the Lord's day that we dedicate to the Lord. And anything that we put in front of that, we're telling the Lord, you do not have my allegiance. Anything. All right, again we find within the 10 Commandments, written on stone, given to the people for the second time, simply because they rejected it the first time. So what principle of thou shalt not work on that Sabbath day, it's a day of rest, can we apply to today? And be careful that we don't make application a command. And in a situation, if you do not mow your yard on Sunday, be careful who you apply that to. That is something that you value, that's your principle. Do not apply it to anyone else. Okay, but I was on their mower in their yard. Should I honor? Absolutely. And even, but as a Christian brother, from the book of Romans 15, if it violates Mark's belief system, I ought to honor that and not offend my brother. So I go out there and I mow the yard and I take some selfies and I put them on Facebook. Well, Mark, you may not mow on Sunday, but I do. The attitude is wrong. And I do not believe that offending a brother. Someone tell me what that's talking about. Because we sure as fire have misused it.
Making someone feel less. Because of something you were doing.
All right, make someone feel less because of something that I'm doing. What else? And everyone is at a different growth position. There are things that I thought, oh, you're hell-bound if you do this, that I've seen differently now. Let me also state that when the Bible talks about a weaker brother, it is always talking about, number one that's immature and ignorant on the subject. It's not talking about them being right. And the obligation is that you are to teach that brother or sister what is right or wrong. Johnny?
I was just going to say, to make the Lord stay holy would mean that you don't put other things before the Lord. You don't take your children to do games or whatever. You honor the Lord, say, and you be at worship.
Mm-hmm. All right, Mike, let's go play golf. Well, when are we going? Go on Sunday. Well, now I got to go to church. Well, this is the only day that I got off. What are you saying to the Lord? What are you saying to your family, your spouse, your neighbors? Lord's in second place. And so we've got this idea, I'm going to go play golf, but you haven't taken the Lord's Supper. Well, I'll go do that tonight. Which again is wrong. The Church of Christ began by not having the Lord's Supper on Sunday night. There are still churches of Christ that will not offer it at night time. Sad thing about that, you've got folks that have to work on Sunday. And so again, you go back to your attitude. And what we do is we use the word offend, or that offends me, rather than I don't like. I don't like doesn't get a whole lot of traction in the church. So I'm offended. First obligation that the offended brother, the weaker brother, has is that they must be teachable and want to learn. If they don't, then what? And I say this from 46 years of preaching. And I do not hesitate to say it, and I do not apologize for it. The Bible talks about a weaker brother being offended is to be taught. And if they are not willing to be taught, they change from that ignorant person on the subject to a mule-headed brother that wants to cause trouble. You're going to do like I want and expect because you've got to bow down to me. I've seen too much of that in the church.
Well, too many people put Sabbath onto Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that not working and all that was a Sabbath thing. That was the seventh day. So, you know, it's not against God's law if you go home from church on Sunday afternoon and mow your yard, and then come back to church on Sunday night.
Well, I think it's against the Lord's will to mow the yard any day.
Isn't it true that in the first, when the church started, that they worked on Sunday?
There was no such thing as a weekend. Somehow, the brethren on the first day of the week back then somehow would excuse themselves from work, they would worship, and then they went back to work.
Or they had it at night.
Well, they had it at night.
I mean, that's
They went to sleep and they died. Yeah. And you've got to trust the Lord to be able to say to someone no. Okay? What woke me up on that, we're talking about, in the good old days, you had to wear dresses. Men had to dress up. And by the way, I feel no compunction, no discipline to wear a coat and a tie. I believe I can get up and I can preach in a nice polo shirt. I just do it because Donna said, I bought you a blazer, you better wear it. So, the thing about the first day of the week, what do we know that they did on the first day of the week? They what? They came together. There's no command that says you got to come together on the first day of the week, take the Lord's Supper. We have an example, and that example is binding. Why would they be coming together on the first day of the week unless they knew that was the right thing to do? And when they came together on the first day of the week to break bread, and break bread is a synonym, it can be used for a local meal, it can be used for the Lord's Supper. And so the context will tell you But this is what they did. In chapter 16, we have another in 1 Corinthians. I believe a binding example. But here's what we get into. All right, we came out with a deal where you can scan or you can have your money taken out of your account. Maybe that was the Lord taking the money out of my account in Nicaragua. And people would say, but when you scan it, it doesn't come out until Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. If you give today, when does it come out? But do you really think that God is talking about when it comes out of the account or when it's stamped and approved? No. He's talking about it. Every one of us have an obligation to be a part of the whole, helping in the financial needs of the kingdom. All right, so we go to, and if you do not find a direct command for what we do or do not do on the first day of the week, you cannot bind it. You're free to go fishing, play golf, take a nap, watch TV, as long as we have put the Lord first and done what He has commanded us to do. All right, so we have those commandments, and the latter, I think, as they descend, 1 through 10, they also lessen in their priority. The first commandment, love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. Do you ever think, Alonzo, of living a life that makes God look good? Are we not a reflection and the essence of our God? And when we misbehave, to the Jews, Jesus said, you have blasphemed the name of God among the Gentiles. The Jews had acted in such a way that God didn't look very good. Well, that's the God you serve? And they assume He accepts our misbehavior? And I think with the Ten Commandments and the lives that we live now should be a reflection of the very essence of God Almighty. And we are to work on that on a daily basis. So I repent about talking about running over that person who got my money 5 times. Do it 3. We actually watched a program, a documentary on a woman who caught her husband being unfaithful. And she backed over him 5 times by accident. And she told that in court. I wonder if it works. I'm not. All right, any questions? Allison Wynn, apparently, was this on the ladies' page at church? But apparently Allison Wynn spent the night in the hospital. Maybe something about blood pressure, so keep her in your prayers. And if you came in late, we are looking for a twin, a full size, or a twin. We'll take whatever we can get, but prefer a twin size bed. The steel runners or whatever, however they come, the mattress box springs, just to borrow it for a little bit for the guests that are coming in to Sister Louise's. Okay. Charlotte Gann has vertigo. Anyone else? Now remember, if you've got an announcement that needs to go in the bulletin, get it to Sarah via our church email by when? By Tuesday. Good to have everyone with us. If you were writing the 10 Commandments, what would you write? Do what? And by the way, we're going to talk about that person that stole our money. I thought it'd make a good sermon. We have had 2 bank accounts here. We had a lady from Fort Lauderdale. She worked at IHOP and she took my card, swiped it and whatever, and the next thing we know, she had gone into Wells Fargo, into their central system, and changed 3 of our bank accounts into her name. I have lost my Social Security number. And I've told you that if you're asked for your Social Security number and it's not the IRS, make the number up. When you go to stay at a motel somewhere and they want your license plate, just make it up. They got all the information they need when they get that driver's license. All right, you are dismissed.